Welcome everyone to the DNA Sports Report. I'm your host Kate McGowan, and here to cover this week's topics with me are BSC TV Director Dave Fess and Director of WBNY Sports Adam Buchanan. March Madness has arrived with Selection Sunday this last weekend. This year's field features Kansas, Kentucky, Syracuse, and Duke as the top seeds. Dave, which team out of these four has the easiest road to the Final Four?
You know, I'm gonna go with Kansas. You know, I think they're the unanimous #1 team in the country for a reason. They won't have to leave the South tournament at all. So they're pretty much really close to home. They have home court advantage throughout the whole tournament if they do go that far. You know, they're not gonna have to face a power conference school until at least the Sweet 16, so they can get up on teams a lot. A lot of their star players can rest. And, you know, they have one of the best tournament-ready teams in the league. You know, they have experience. They have good leadership. They have one of the best players in the country in Sherron Collins, and they have one of the best coaches in Bill Self. So I think they're best team. They're ready for the tournament, the most talent in the tournament, and I think they have the easiest path, and they'll go all the way to the championships. Adam?
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Dave. I think the East in Syracuse is going to be the easiest, with Kentucky, the top seed, being the easiest way to the Final Four right now. If you look at their bracket, mostly it's filled with mid-major conference players. Their possible matchups all the way up until the Elite Eight is Texas, Temple, and Wisconsin. None of those teams really jump out at you and say is a legitimate threat. If you look in like the Midwest or the West, you got top conferences from like the Big East, the ACC, the Big Ten. The East Conference, that's really severely lacking, so I think Kentucky's got the easiest road to the Final Four.
All right. And with the easiest path to the Final Four out of the way, let's see who has the toughest hill to climb to Indianapolis. Let's start with you, Adam.
I'm going to go with Kansas, the opposite of what you said, Dave. If you look at the Midwest bracket, their potential matchups: Michigan State, Maryland, Tennessee, who's beat Kansas already, on top of another #1 seed in Kentucky. These guys have a tough road. They got a lot of tough competition. You're not talking about Georgetown, Oklahoma State, who made a big run, Ohio State, who's #1 or #2 in that bracket. So they got a lot of tough, steep competition.
Did you not listen to anything I just said? Like I said before, Adam, you need to pay attention to me more. They're not going to face any power conference teams until at least the Sweet 16. And no matter what tournament you're in, when you get to the Sweet 16, you're going to have to face tough teams. Now, if you want to look at a team that does have the toughest road to the championship, it's going to be Syracuse. Because you look at some of the teams they're going to have to play early on in the tournament: Gonzaga, Vanderbilt, Pitt, who they lost to Pitt when Pitt was unranked, and Kansas State as well. You know, there's a lot of times when you get a lot of upsets in the first round of the tournament. You know, I don't think that Syracuse would be upset in the first round, but they really do have a tough schedule ahead of them. They had to face Kansas at some point. They're going to face Georgetown at some point. And Syracuse just does not have that tournament-ready team like Kansas does, Adam, to get far in the tournament.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you completely. Syracuse has a 6th starter. They're going to move Chris Joseph to power forward, and they're going to move Rick Jackson up to center. So they really don't have a problem, even if Arenze Onuaku does sit in the first round of the tournament. They got a strong team. A lot of experts have them going all the way. Kansas, on the other hand, like I picked, UNLV is an up-and-coming. They're going to have to face Kansas in the second round. Then you get from there, it's either going to be Michigan State or Maryland in the Sweet 16. Both of those teams play in top power conferences. So for you to say that Kansas doesn't play anybody, yeah, they have home field advantage or home advantage, but when you really think about it, they don't, because you see these power conferences like a Michigan State, like a Maryland, who play in tough conferences as opposed to some other conferences.
Well, they might play in tough conferences, but they haven't been playing like a tough team. Some of those teams aren't teams that match up against Kansas. Kansas is the #1 team in the country. They've played in a tough conference. They've played some tough teams, and they've proven they don't have to worry about a Michigan State or anything like that.
See, we're going to agree to disagree there, because they have to be a good team in order to make the tournament as a whole. So for them to say they're not playing really good is something that you're not fully exploring. If you really look in depth at the teams, these are some good teams in the Midwest bracket. Granted, Kansas plays in the South, but that's not going to matter once you actually have to sit and play the game. And I'm going to have to disagree with it.
Well, we can all be right, Adam. That's fine.
All right, guys. Well, the selection committee has to make tough calls every year with teams on the bubble. Adam, when the brackets were revealed, who were you most surprised to see make it in?
I'm going to say Minnesota, and the only reason why Minnesota, I think, made it in to begin with is they had a good run in the Big Ten tournament. 21-13 overall. Didn't have a really good showing. Their offense lacked in most of the games they played this season. So it was a big surprise, and that Big Ten tournament really made it for Minnesota, like it did with some other teams that made deep runs in the Big East and the ACC tournaments, with like a Maryland, who made it in based on their conference tournament. So that was a shock to me because they didn't really play well all season as you look at their record, but they made it in because they did really well in their tournament.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Florida. You know, after 2 years of Florida not being in the tournament, they finally got back in this year, but their play really hasn't determined that they could be in the tournament. You know, they have an RPI of 56, and they're 3-8 against the RPI's top 50. And you look back at other teams who were on the bubble and didn't get in, a lot of other teams have a better record than 3-8 against the RPI top 50. You know, they don't really have a strong backcourt there in Florida. You know, I did saying that, they picked them to win their first round game, but I was really surprised that Florida did get the nod over other teams like Mississippi State and Virginia Tech.
All right, and some teams get to celebrate on Selection Sunday while others get left out of the big dance. Dave, which team do you think, you know, is going to get snubbed this year?
You know, like I said too before when we were talking about Florida, I said Mississippi State. You look at Mississippi State, their stats and their record, not a whole lot different from Florida, but they do have a better RPI, and they do have a slightly better percent in the RPI top 50. Now, if you're looking at these two teams, why do you choose Florida over Mississippi State? Because Florida's in a better conference? I don't know. I mean, I think the selection committee made a little bit of a mistake there by letting Florida in instead of Mississippi State.
I think the selection committee did a great job this year. I really don't think there is a major snub. The biggest argument I've heard is Virginia Tech. They were 23-8 in the ACC conference, but the ACC conference was a bad conference to play in this year. They only had one team that was legitimately in the top 25 the entire time, and that was Duke, who I think, in my opinion, is a little overrated. But I think they did a great job. The only team that really had a legitimate argument was, like you said, but Virginia Tech, I don't think, had an argument because they just played in a weak conference, and granted they had 8 losses, but those 8 losses were against not top teams. So I think the selection committee did a great job this year. I don't really think there was a big snub, as previous years would indicate.
All right. This time of the year, it's all about the brackets. It seems everyone has one, and everyone loves to talk about them. It's no different with Dave and Adam here. So their homework, and they have filled their brackets out. We're going to start with Dave. Give me your brackets,
right.
And let's
this right here is a bracket that's going to win, guys. That's your winning bracket right there.
Well, thank you. And what about your bracket?
I don't know if you can zoom in on this, guys, but this is the game-winning bracket. I've studied this, I've looked at it, I've gone in depth with a lot of teams. This is going to be it right here. So zoom in on this. Dave's going to be wearing girly makeup for the next show. There you go, Kate.
All right, well, to make things more interesting, this loser will get a special makeover, supposedly. So that promises to be very memorable. Aren't we all excited to actually see that? So
I hope you look good
excited
in
for that.
Adam.
Hey, Dave.
Oh, geez.
Put some little eyeliner on you.
Guys, let's get a taste of your predictions now with those 4 games. Dave, let's start with you.
I'm going to go with first Tennessee, San Diego State. I'm going to go Tennessee wins that game. What do you think, Adam?
Tennessee as well, you know. So they've played they beat 2 #1 teams, so I'm going to go with Tennessee.
All right, and Adam, number 8, Texas against number 9, Wake Forest.
Texas. I'm going to go with Texas on that one. Wake Forest.
I spent about 10 seconds thinking about this game, and unfortunately, I'm going to agree with Adam here and say Texas. Wake Forest just does not have it.
All right, the number 5 Temple Owls play Andy Bernard's 12-seeded Cornell Big Red. Adam, who wins this one?
See, this is the one I had a little trouble with. I thought Cornell might have made it an interesting game, but I'm going to go with Temple.
I'll agree with you there, Temple.
All right, and Dave's 6-seeded Marquette Golden Eagles versus the Pac-10 champs, number 11 Washington.
Marquette.
I'm going to go with Washington.
All right, guys, and last up, number 7 Clemson Tigers against the 10th-seeded Missouri Tigers. Adam?
I'm going to go with Clemson on this one.
All right.
Agreed. Clemson.
All right, finally, give us your upset special for the opening round games. Adam, you first.
Washington, they got great guard play and good defense.
All right, on the other side of the break, we'll move on to that week and with the Saberland, and later on we'll have our weekly Bills topic. Stay tuned.